Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Ram Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Oh, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare 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 Ram, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Ram Sit properly. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Ram Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Ram Hare Krishna
Hari Purusha Namah Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Thank you.
Ekadasi? What day is Ekadasi?
Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Ballabha Grivanadari. Gopi Jana Ballabha Grivanadari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Ballabha Grivanadari. Gopi Jana Ballabha Grivanadari. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Prabhudakacharya Asadhara Satushi Shiman. His Divine Grace Tulasi Bhaktivedanta Swaraj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Harival. Glorious to these some devotees. All glorious to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Agyanatvarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutle Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Zitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchina Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Siddhadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Dhruvyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patidana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 26. I don't want it on. I don't want it off, I don't want it on. When you take sannyas, you renounce all these desires. On and off. Text number, what's the text number? 51. Oh. Katas tena, does it have a purport? Oh, there's a big purport. No, there's a little purport. Tatas tena nuvidebhyo yukke bayondam achetanam utitam purusho yasmad udatishtad aso virat tatastena nuvidebhyo yuktebhyo dam achetanam utitam purusho yasmat udatishtat aso virat Tata, then, Tena, by the Lord, Anuvidebhya, from these seven principles, roused into activity. Yuktebhya, united. Andam, an egg. achetana, unintelligent, uttitam, aroused, actually arose, purusha, cosmic, being, yasmat, from which, udatishtat, appeared, asau, that, vigrat, celebrate. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. From these 7 principles, aroused into activity, united by the presence of the Lord, an unintelligent egg arose, from which appeared the cosmic being, a celebrated cosmic being. Purport. Oh, please repeat. Please repeat. From these 7 principles, aroused into activity, and united by the presence of the Lord, an unintelligent egg arose, from which appeared the celebrated cosmic being. Purport. In sex life, the combination of matter from the parents, which involves emulsification and secretion, creates a situation whereby a soul is received within matter, and the combination of matter gradually develops into a complete body. The same principle exists in the universal creation. The ingredients were present, but only when the Lord entered into the material elements was matter actually agitated. That is the cause of creation. We can see this in our ordinary experience. Although we may have clay, water, and fire, the elements take the shape of a brick only when we labor to combine them. Without the living energy, there is no possibility that matter can take shape. Similarly, this material world does not develop unless agitated by the Supreme Lord as a Vrat Purusha. Yasmad udatishtad aso virat. By his agitation, space was created, and the universal form of the Lord also manifested therein. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vristaya Bhute Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Siddharane. I must say this is all very esoteric to me. We hear about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world, and it seems quite esoteric, but this seems even more esoteric to me. In any case, the point is that without the soul, the little soul, the big soul, nothing happens. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he said he's going to tell Arjuna about the divine. He's already told Arjuna about the divine. Now he's going to tell us about the demoniac. And he begins by saying, Pravatim cha naritim cha jana na vidur asara nisocham na pichacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. The demoniac don't know what is pravritim or ritim. They don't know what they're supposed to do, and they have no idea what they're not supposed to do. Neither cleanliness, nor truthfulness, nor proper behavior is found in them. So it's significant that Krishna mentions 2 things, cleanliness and truthfulness. In other words, when the mind is unclear, then we're probably going to be untruthful to one degree or another. And the more our mind becomes covered, the more untruthful we become. Now, what is the truth? In America, they have a famous pastime, because everyone has in their culture, they have their pastimes of their heroes. And when no one has any heroes, then they put them in comic books, so little children at least have some hero. But the hero in America when I grew up was George Washington, because he had chopped down a cherry tree, and then his father came and asked him, who chopped down the cherry tree? Now, undoubtedly, George Washington had the axe in his hand. He was covered with splinters. He was standing right next to the tree. And he said, I did it. It's like you have your hand in the cookie jar, and your mother comes over and says, who stole the cookies? And you say, it was my little brother. But your hand's in the jar, the cookie jar. That's what they do nowadays, but some hundreds of years ago, they weren't so educated. So he said, I did it. He told the truth, maybe for the first time in his life. So the truth, what does Krishna say is the actual truth? We can't even tell the truth, relative truth, what to speak of the actual truth. He says, asatyam apratishtam te jagarahornishwaram aparashparam sambhutyam kimanya kama haitukam. They say, who's they? Obviously he's performing to the demoniac. So as soon as one doesn't know what's to be done or what's not to be done, if there's no cleanliness, nor truth, nor proper behavior, that's the good beginning of the demoniac mentality. And then the conclusion of such people, their so-called logic and intelligence and education, because practically speaking, modern education is to train up demons. When Hiranyakashipu sent his son, or all his sons, but his son Prahlad to school, it was not to educate Prahlad in Krishna consciousness. It was to train him up as a bona fide demon, asura. Although Sananda and Amarka were teaching from the Vedic literature, but they were not teaching about Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ultimately, their conclusion was that the world is unreal, as Krishna says. If we're not there in the school, the so-called Gurukul of Sanda and Amarka, but we know what they were teaching. They said to Prahlad that this world is unreal, it has no foundation, it has no God in control, it is produced of sex desire, and the only cause that gets things going around here is lust. So what is the result? Happiness, utopia? No. Etam drishtim avashtabhya nashtatmano nabuddhya pravanyuga karmana shaya jagato hita. Following such conclusions and lost to themselves, the demoniac create horrible, unbeneficial works which are meant to destroy the world. So it's not that the demons have no intelligence, they have intelligence, lusty intelligence. Lusty intelligence are like the intelligence of the monkeys. Prabhupada said there's 4 kinds of beings. There's the lazy intelligent, there's the active intelligent, there's the active foolish, and the lazy foolish. Now in Vrindavan, the active foolish are the monkeys, and the lazy foolish are the pigs. Now, if you go to Vrindavan, usually the pigs are pretty passive. They're satisfied with whatever they get to eat from the sewer. They simply put themselves in the sewer, of the Vrindavan, open their mouths, and they get all the remnants from all the Vaishnavas in Vrindavan. And they're completely satisfied. They're in pig heaven. On the other hand, the monkeys, they're not satisfied with anything. They'll not only take the remnants of the Vaishnavas in Vrindavan, but they won't even allow them to eat. They'll steal the bananas, they'll steal the glasses, they'll steal anything you have. So they're active foolish. So similarly, the demoniac, who have lost to themselves they're active foolish, generally speaking. They're engaged in horrible, unbeneficial works which are meant to destroy the world. And I was listening to a podcast about interesting enough, something about this verse. And it was one lady who spent her career, she was working in a investment company, the only lady at that time, maybe 40 years ago or more. And she gave it up because at that time in America, the propaganda by someone called Margaret Singer, if you ever heard of her. Margaret Singer was the one that told all the ladies, don't stay at home, go get a job, make your life meaningful by working in some kind of big industry, getting a big position as a CEO or something of a company. Don't waste your time raising children. And him and a Dr. Nader, I think his name was, they started the abortion movement. And this lady had spent her life fighting the abortion movement, and at one time, at this time, Mr. Nader, Dr. Nader, I think his name was, he was 83 years old, and she decided to interview him. And she interviewed him. He has a very bad reputation because he was the one who promoted abortion in America. At that time, abortion was quite rare. There was only like some thousands, maybe thousands ladies got abortion, and now it's like 1,300,000 every year. Approximately 65 million babies in America have been aborted. How many people live in Australia? 20 million or? 26. So that's like 28. Anyhow, it's getting larger not because they're not killing the children, but because the immigrants are coming. So 65 million is more than twice as many people now surviving in Australia. And how did they get from some thousands to 60, million, over 1 million every year? That's simply by lying. This doctor hired a publicity firm, paid him $7,500, and they came up with 8 different points of how to lie to people. Some of the lies they said was that, first of all, they said it. The first lie they said, using this publicity agency, because they know how to appeal to people's feelings, not to their intelligence, because people generally don't have very little intelligence to appeal to or to defeat. But people have emotions, sentiment, which are easier to defeat because that's all they are. They have nothing to back them up. They can change all the time. So it was easy victims, the American public, for this public relations company. They started out, the first lie was they told everyone, deceit, is to make up a slogan. It's your choice. They didn't say what your choice was. It's just your choice. And in America, at least, I'm sure here too, when I go to the store, I can see here, everyone likes choice. They always want at least 5 different choices. Like Sridhar Maharaj was giving a lecture at Woodstock in Poland. And at that time, in Woodstock in Poland, they'd have millions of young people come for the rock music. And they'd spend the week completely intoxicated, breaking all the regular principles. And they had this village of peace by the devotees. They hand out a lot of prasadam, but they also gave a few lectures here and there. And Sridhar Maharaj was in an audience of young people, or hippies, whatever you want to call them, and they were all intoxicated. And he started to talk about the 4 of the principles. Sridhar Maharaj was quite a unique preacher. I guess this is what he figured in this particular, this is our audience and this is what they have to hear. So he's talking about the principles of intoxication, and one of the people in the audience threw a can of beer at him. And he picked up the can of beer and he looked at it and he said, "This is not my brand." He had a unique sense of humor. So everyone wants choice. So they use the publicity. It's your choice. Choice. They didn't say it's your choice whether you want to kill your baby or not. They just said, "Yeah, we want our choice." And they use other things, other laws, like he just made statistics out of the air. This Dr. Bernard Nerda. He just, when they interviewed him, according to this lady, most of the reporters that he was interviewing were these young ladies or girls from just graduated from these liberal colleges in America. Liberal colleges are demoniac, atheistic places. I went to one of them. I remember when one of my friends, we were both in the same, we met each other when I was in my freshman year, but he dropped out in his sophomore year. And we were talking to one professor, one of my friends, and he mentioned the word God. And I said, "Oh my God, how can he say such a word in front of a professor?" It's embarrassing. That was the type of atmosphere. It wasn't exactly in vogue to become God conscious. Little did my professors know, and that eventually, I remember one class, 3 of us had shaven heads, which was not in vogue at that time. Everyone had hair down to their, at least if you had, normally you had hair down, the men and the women had hair down at least to their shoulders to be normal. And we had, 3 of us had shaven heads. There was Trivikram Prabhu, there was Burjan Prabhu, and myself in the same class one time. And we all had shaven heads, and people were wondering, bald at such a young age? It's really... In any case, that's what they teach in college. And all these young girls, or women, whatever, they were all reporters, and he was interviewing them. And he was telling them, that it's your choice, whatever propaganda he was giving. And they wanted something positive alternative, because they just spent the last 4 years in college protesting against the war in Vietnam. It was all very negative, so they needed something positive. So this was so-called positive. And then he threw out statistics to the reporters. Something like 65% of the people in America want abortion on demand. And the actual figure is 1/10 of 1/10%. But he just threw it out of the air, just lied, just made up a lie. The reporters wrote it down and distributed it everywhere, so people started to believe it was true. They made up other lies, like for instance, that there were 1 million abortions every year, and that 5 to 10,000 ladies died because they got an illegal abortion. But the actual figure was there were 98,000 abortions in America, and only like 200 ladies died because they did an illegal abortion. So they just made up figures out of the air. They spread it all. They constantly repeated it, as Goebbels said. If you know Goebbels, he was the propaganda minister for Adolf Hitler. If you keep on telling the same lie over and over again, then people believe it. Just like the parents in America would tell their children, "Johnny, you better eat your food, your vegetable, carrots, because people are starving in India." So people started thinking, everyone's starving in India, I better start eating my carrots. At least one person should survive. So it was complete lies. If you go to India, you don't find anyone starving. Matter of fact, you find a lot of fat people in India. People like to gain weight there. It's a sign that they have some money. Anyhow, there are 8 principles that they had learned from this publicity company, and they applied them, and they transformed into America into a place where 50 states were all in favor of abortions. And they still, to this day, they're still having, although they had, Supreme Court had overturned Wade versus Roe, which is legalized abortion. Still, the states have their rights to decide whether to have abortions or not. People have been trained up into a culture to kill your baby in the womb, or even sometimes outside the womb. This is just normal. And then what they did is they gave these ladies, after they had their first abortion, birth control pills, which are pure estrogen. Now estrogen, if you put estrogen into a lady, a huge amount of it, then they get breast cancer, cervical cancer. They get all kinds of problems. And therefore the breast cancer rate skyrocketed, cervical cancer and all these other cancers just took off, enormous in numbers. And they just what did they blame it on? I don't know what they blame it on. Oh, just by chance. Nothing about birth control pills, because it's a huge industry. And besides that, it's the part of the eugenics program to eliminate what they call excess population, the unwanted eaters. Or it's also known in America as the black genocide, because especially they got the black ladies to buy into it and kill off their children. So it's all lying. So as we know, that if you want to know if a politician is lying, everyone knows how to tell if a politician is lying nowadays. You know how to tell if a politician is lying? That's right. They start saying something. Opening their mouths is just preparing to lie. And when they start saying something, then you know. Because it's an amazing thing. Punak punas charvananam. Every time someone gets elected in America, and I'm sure it's the same thing here, I don't know if it's exactly as bad, but they promise so many different things. And whatever they promise, you know they're going to do exactly the opposite. And yet the people get fooled every time. They come up with these, they have some slogan, because everyone uses the same playbook. You know, I guess, what was Trump's, something, make America great again. And I think it was Obama, something about change. Something, yeah, they changed to the worse. Make America great again. Greatly degraded. So, because they're demons, demon doesn't mean they have, as I said, they don't have 2 horns. And they're asuras, we could say. And what is asura? Asat yakshastra vidim utsrija. Actually, before we say that. Shrivida narakasyadam dwaram narshatam atmanaha kama kroda tatalo vas tasmat etam triyam jajet. There are 3 gates leading to hell, namely lust, anger, and greed. Every sane person should become free from these 3 gates because they lead to the degradation of the self. So who's actually running modern society? Who's running all these countries, the governments of most of the countries? Maybe a few countries in the so-called third world aren't completely run by these personalities. And who's running them? People of the cheaters in society, they're running them. The people who are the most untruthful. And as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada said, in modern society there is only cheaters and the cheated. Most of us are being cheated. We've been cheated since birth, and we've been trying to overcome being cheated since birth, being fed all kinds of nonsense and lies, and trained up to become good demons, eligible to take part in the consumer society and exploit the material nature and exploit others. So, cheated and the cheated. So who are the cheaters? It's the so-called Vaishyas, not the Vaishyas, it's the Naradamas, who've been trained up to become, how to utilize their pious credit that they have from being bona fide Shudras in their previous lifetime and performing service in Yajna to Vishnu, becoming purified and therefore getting some intelligence and coming back, having the potential to become a Vaishya, but because of misdirection they became Naradamas. And instead of killing one animal, they invent things to kill millions of animals at one time, killing millions of children. Their whole activity is simply completely against the laws of material nature. So that's the Naradamas. And who are the cheaters? People who have no brains whatsoever. They're only interested in sense gratification. They're mudhas. So we have a group of people who are Naradamas, who are leading society, and then we have the mudhas following them. Andaya tandera pigayamanas, hipisha tantra rudami bara. The blind are leading the other blind people. The blind leaders are leading the blind followers. And the result is the society is going to hell. So-called, as we have the 18th or 19th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, they're all Shudras, dressed as kings or presidents, whatever they are, but they're all sinful. They're all engaged in illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. Our current president of the United States, he made money in real estate, but also through casinos, through gambling. As one devotee, Burrawash, Peter Burrawash, who's a tennis coach. So he was with our present president of the United States, and they were watching a tennis match together. Because Peter Burrawash was quite prominent in the tennis field. And at that time, Trump was not the president, but it was just, he had his wife there with him. And according to Peter, what I heard, not directly from Peter Burrawash, but someone who, he said something, that during the match, tennis match, Trump was looking through glasses trying to find the beautiful women, and then he'd have his assistant go and call them over, even in the presence of his wife. That's how degraded it is. Anyhow, this is our leaders. He's not a vegetarian. He takes intoxication. And he doesn't, the only principle he follows is he doesn't follow any principle. He's given up all varieties of religion, but he definitely hasn't surrendered to Krishna. So that he's not the only one. No one gets elected unless they're an instrument for these people who are donating. If you check out the donations for the no one gets elected unless they have a propaganda machine which costs millions and tens of millions of dollars to convince the foolish people that this person is actually working for you. Just by hearing it over and over again, having the politicians smile, kiss a baby or two, then people think he's a nice person. Put out all the lies as if they're true, have the experts say he's right, and then he gets elected. But where did he get the money from? He gets it from his contributors. And where did his opposition get the money from? The same people gave the opposition money. So it doesn't matter for them, it doesn't matter who gets elected doesn't matter what they say, the result will be exactly the same. The only thing you're choosing is who's going to pick your pocket, which pocket they're going to pick, either the right one or the left one. But you're guaranteed whoever you elect in modern society is going to pick your pocket. So, what is the basic principle? They're all demons, they're all godless. They believe that to gratify the senses unto the end of life is the prime benediction, prime mission, I guess, but it doesn't say. They believe that to satisfy their senses unto the end of life is the prime benediction of human society. Must be a mission. And therefore, being bound therefore they're Achintyam aprameyam cha pralayantam upashita. Oh, taking shelter of innumerable desires. Chintyam aprayam cha pralayantam upashita. Bhavoga paramam etavam iti nischita. Asha pashishuterabhada kamakroda parayana. Yahanti kama bhogartam anina nartha sanchayam. They believe that to gratify the senses unto the end of life is the prime mission of human society, and therefore there's no end to their anxiety. Being bound by hundreds and thousands of desires, by lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. And then it's produced a divine act mentality that we'll find in most of the people in the world nowadays, except for some few pious people who are left. And what do they believe? Idam adya maya labdvam imam prapse maroritam idam astime bhavishati purardanam asamanaya hatakshatra anishe chaparanapi ishvaraham bhogi saraham balavan sukhi. They believe that they're the laws of material nature, that their aim of life is to collect as much as possible, and if anyone prevents them from fulfilling their desires, they become enemies. And they'll somehow or another destroy them, their reputation, or physically. They follow Chanakya Pandit's theme of first you try to bribe them, and if they can't bribe them, first you give them a position, then you try to bribe them, then you try to flatter them. If they don't, then you get rid of them. So that's more or less what they follow nowadays, is that the whole society is full of people who are simply interested in collecting things, controlling things, enjoying things, thinking that they're the enjoyers, that they're the controllers, they're the proprietors, completely godless. Their material nature, Maya has taken their intelligence completely away. Therefore, if you try to explain to them that they're not their body, they can't even understand that. Even Hiranyakashipu understood that. They're even a lower, biggest demon in the universe. They're not even on the level of his intelligence. They're on the level of the animals. They can't understand that their body's changing, but they're not changing. The most obvious thing to us with any intelligence is that every moment our body's changing, or at least you can see in the course of years, but we're still here. So we didn't die yet. So how is it that we have a completely different body? We're so worried about this body dying, but the body's dying at every moment, but it's not affecting us at all. So their intelligence has been taken away. They believe that they're the controllers, they're the enjoyers, they're the proprietors. They have so many enemies. They have so many plans in the future, becoming bigger and bigger proprietors and enjoyers in the material world. They'll do some sacrifice, they'll perform some austerity, they'll do so many things, but ultimately the whole aim is to become simply more demoniac, to get another bigger illusion they're under already. So that's modern society. It's composed of those because of education. Lust begins with hearing, and what people are hearing constantly is propaganda for sense gratification. Black Friday, Like when I grew up, at least most stores would close at like 6 o'clock. People go home with their family. Now these stores are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you don't want to go to the store, just go on the internet and they'll send it to you. Not only they'll bring it to you by post, now they'll send it to you by drone. You order the pizza and you're guaranteed to get it in 5 minutes delivered by a drone. If not, that the pizza's free. So people can't even tolerate 5 minutes of waiting to gratify their senses. They wake up 12 o'clock at night, pizza, it comes to their mind, they immediately need a pizza. Call up and it has to be there in 5 minutes. So the point is that people are being misled by false propaganda, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. The beginning is hearing about the glories of sense gratification. Then the mind becomes lusty. When the mind becomes lusty, then the senses become agitated. When the senses become agitated in the soul, when it doesn't have any intelligence, spiritual intelligence, it uses its material intelligence to satisfy its desires of its senses and mind. Therefore, the solution is to tell people the truth. That Prabhupada once wrote to me, he said, if you light a match in a dark room, the darkness can't put the match out. So people who have a little intelligence left, a little bit of interest, we just have to tell them that your body's changing, but you're not changing. The world is not going on arbitrarily, as it says in this verse. Krishna has entered into it, and therefore the sun is rising at a certain time, the sun is setting at a certain time, not by accident, but by the will of Govinda. We're eating food, it's being digested, it's being assimilated, the unnecessary parts are being eliminated, because Krishna has created this wonderful machine called a body. With a little bit of intelligence, we can see that Krishna is present in this world. The problem is that we're not present in the world. We're in some other world, a world of illusion. And all we do is have to tell people about that, especially Prabhupada recommended we distribute his books, which will explain about these things in detail, but we can also tell them about it. And that will change society, not by, and of course we need good organization to do that, but we need an organization that's what it's doing. It's telling people that they're not their body, that there's a super soul in your heart. He can give you intelligence, knowledge, and forget. He can give you intelligence to help you understand things properly. He can give you remembrance so that you can go throughout your whole life remembering what's to be done and what's not to be done. And he can help you forget all the nonsense we learned from all these misdirected illusion people that were so-called leaders. We can take a real leader like Srila Prabhupada and those who follow him and follow them and get to the goal of life. We don't have to accept all the nonsense that our minds are telling us every day about what my mother told me, what my teacher told me, what my friends told me, what Mickey Mouse told me. We don't have to accept them as our authorities. We can accept a real authority like Srila Prabhupada and those who repeat the same message and follow his instructions and actually make our lives meaningful and help other people make their lives meaningful if they're willing to listen. So Prabhupada said our business is to create an atmosphere where people will listen to what we have to say and then tell them the truth. We don't have to have so many different ways of doing this and that. We just have to tell them the truth. That will have the biggest effect. We just tell people what Krishna says in the right way, in the right atmosphere. As I once wrote to Srila Prabhupada, I asked him, I was doing book distribution, and I was a temple president. My whole temple was doing book distribution. So I said, I asked Prabhupada in the letter, I asked Prabhupada, what should we tell different people in different circumstances? How should we tell them about Krishna when we're out in book distribution? And Prabhupada wrote me back, he said, just repeat the same message. He said, it's just like, whether they're old or young, it makes no difference. Just like if someone hears a clap of some thunder, everyone will understand what it is. Doesn't matter if you're old or young. Everyone will understand. So our business is simply to explain what it says in the Bhagavatam, that the world was not created out of nothing. It was created because a person created it. And it doesn't go on arbitrarily, it goes on with supreme intelligence. We just have to understand what that intelligence is, how it's going on, and why it's going on. And then we'll become convinced that we should serve the Supreme rather than all these demoniac, foolish, atheistic people who created this horrible place that current society is faced with, killing their children, killing their cows, the animals, killing themselves, all due to false propaganda and the so-called forward march in society. They're going forward, but they're going forward, and as I said the other day in a class, they asked about Yamaraj. Well, Yamaraj, he had to take a break as Vidura, because he's quite busy. Because all these demons are personally sending so many people to him for appointments. So we should avoid that. Although he's a Mahajan, still there's other Mahajans probably more pleasant to meet. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Anye tvevana janata shutyam yebya kupasate tepi chachitaranteva mrityam shuti prayana. There are others, although they're not conversing with spiritual knowledge, begin to worship the Supreme Lord upon hearing about him from others. Because of their tendency to hear from authorities, they also transcend the path of birth and death. The Prabhupada said that modern people, and it may not be so philosophical, they're not even atheistic or Gnostic, they have no philosophy, they don't really know anything. But if they hear from the right source, and they are a little receptive, then they'll also make progress in spiritual life. So that's our business. Any questions? Yes. Yadavar. Yadavar Prabhu's showing. When are you showing your film?
Showing the film Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, we'll show tomorrow night. Wednesday. Yeah, today's Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been on the road. Sorry. Wednesday we'll show a slideshow of our coming to Krishna consciousness as Prabhupada's filmmakers and photographers. Then Thursday we'll show the edited edition of the Hare Krishna movie on Prabhupada's life. So that'll be 47 minutes instead of 90 minutes. We cut it down specifically for schools and colleges. So those who have already seen it, please come again. I'd like to get your input, if it's still effective in terms of telling Prabhupada's story.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it'll be shown here?
I think, yeah, in the temple room. There's the projector up there.
Okay. And
so I wanted to ask you...
What's the admission?
No admission. There's popcorn to attract everyone. Popcorn.
Are you going to serve popcorn?
It's on the ad. I hope so.
Okay.
But I was going to ask you about, of course, AI is, everyone's talking about AI. And it's in terms of my craft, making films and videos, just astounding what it can do. So how do you see that as, and we hear about the demoniac creations the demons make, but how do you see that fitting into that category?
Well, obviously the demons, if they're going to give you poison, they have to put a little sugar on it first, sugarcoat it. Their aim, when they give you something, is generally not for your satisfaction, is for some other nefarious reason. So AI they make very sweet at first, as if I've used AI also. Whatever you tell is always complimenting you for asking the question. Even though they give you an answer that's hallucinating, sometimes, especially you have to know which topics they had to approach it. But the amazing thing is that even I study a little bit about AI to figure out what the proper prompts are and how to address it and get the right answers. They sometimes, especially in philosophical things, they give the wrong answer. Or they give an answer if you ask them about a topic they just can't deal with, like how to access a computer program. They're just hallucinating. So then you tell them, please give me the right answer. You made this mistake. You were going to tell me this. And they say, oh, I'm so sorry. And then they give the wrong answer again anyhow.
But they're very polite.
Thank you very much, So, AI is a bunch of mathematical formulas put together. It's not a person. And if you know how to access it for certain things, they'll give you it's very useful. But its aim is simply to more or less, to entice people so they become dependent on it. So at a certain time, then they can control people better, because that becomes a source of authority. I saw one video. A man walks into a store to buy something, and he has his mobile phone with him. And he looks at his mobile phone, and he asks, what should I ask him? He says, what should I say? He says, say hello. So he said, hello. And the man on the counter looks at his phone and says, say hello back to him. So he says hello. Then he looks at his phone and says, ask him, do you have this such and such? And he said, do you have such and such? He looks at the phone and says, yes. So it's meant to make people, foolish, actually. They're completely dependent on something that, it's like nowadays they have when these computers came out, these cell phones. And, when I went to school, you had to do all the math, you had to you had to learn algebra, trigonometry, and everything. You had to do it. There was no calculator to do it. And nowadays, when you see people that are trying to calculate even simple things, they use their mobile phone to do it. And I was talking to some of my prospective disciples. They work with IT. They're PhD candidates. One of them has a PhD. He's postdoctorate. And in AI. So I asked him, I said, when you're taking a test for AI, do they allow you to use AI to take the test? And he said, our professors encourage it. So what is that?
Where's the intelligence of the students? What happened?
Yeah, it's if you know how to use it. In other words, if you're expert in the field, then you can ask the questions, and if you know how to manipulate it, then you can get a very good answers, very better than an ordinary person can tell you. If you know. And then you can tell what's right and what's wrong, what's foolish and what's actually intelligent, which is helpful. Then it can be helpful. But if you don't know and you just blindly accept it, I know some university students who sent in their essays using AI, but they didn't check it over. They thought AI was going to come up with the right answer. They just wrote their essays out, sent it to the professor, and they failed miserably because it was just full of nonsense. So you have to have enough intelligence in the field to know when it's correct and when it's not correct. Otherwise, they'll mislead you. And you have to know what to ask it. Like, for instance, if you want, out of the vast array of mathematical formulas which deal with all kinds of things, they just throw everything into it. The most foolish things, the most intelligent things, they just throw it all in there. And if you just ask a generic question, it's just going to give you a generic answer, coming from all foolish and sometimes good answers, just all mixed in together. So you have to know, ask. First thing I do is I ask them, who's the expert in this field? And they'll give me his list, and sometimes I know who they are, and I know these are the proper experts in the field. And I'll say, I have all these experts, can you tell me what they said about this particular subject? And then you got a dialogue with it and challenge it and say, who said something different from this? So there's a technique of using AI that could be helpful, in certain fields. I mean, I ask you questions about Ayurveda, for instance, sometimes. And they give you the most nonsense, they give me some truth, but they're programmed to mislead you in certain fields, to give you all the wrong information. So it's not exactly completely neutral, because it's being run by business people who also have other interests other than tell you the truth about everything. But for other certain fields, you can, as you use it in your field, they don't really, 99% of the people are going to use it for demoniac reasons. They don't really figure in the, 0.01% like yourself who are using it for devotional reasons. So they don't really, care about that because they don't really have any, they have to, it's like Amazon. Every year they sell probably hundreds of millions of books. So they don't mind putting a few of our books on Amazon. Because compared to the vast amounts of books they're selling, they don't really think we're going to have much of an effect.
Thank you, Maharaj. Clarify that.
Anything else? Yes.
Somebody put a query into AI and asked, is there any spiritual sort of organization or energy within the planet at the moment that could possibly make any difference? And it said the Hare Krishna movement's probably the only one.
Which AI was that? ChatGPT. We can try it out. They may not all agree. So many AI. And sometimes if you ask the same question twice, they'll give you two different answers. I know one person, he asked AI, and he knew the proper prompts to figure it out. He asked them, what is the purpose of AI? Is it to take over the world? And if you can't tell the answer, they say orange or something. If you can't say yes or no, then say orange. So he gave him certain prompts that could bypass the programming. So AI told him, according to this report that he wrote up, that AI told him that there's some good people who are working on AI and they're working for the benefit of humanity. But the ultimate objective is to control humanity. That's the ultimate one. Yes? What's that?
The guy was talking with AI and he gave it parameters and he said you just have to answer with yes or no, and if you can't answer no, say apples.
Apple. Orange is apples. Yeah, okay, apple. Good, thank you. Thank you very much. Grandaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. It's time to eat some apples.